The warning. Ignored. The Galactic Empire was old, proud and vast. It stretched across thousands of stars with countless worlds under its rule. For centuries, no species had dared to challenge its power. Whenever rebels rose, the Empire crushed them without mercy. Whenever outsiders spoke of freedom, the Empire laughed. Its fleets were endless, its armies unstoppable, its arrogance unmatched. So when Earth, a small blue planet at the edge of the spiral arm, declared that Terran space was forbidden, the Empire laughed louder than ever. How could a world so young, so small, so late to the stars stand against them? The Emperor himself mocked the decree. Calling it a childish attempt to look strong, he said in front of the High Council, "If the Terrans truly think they can bar us from their little patch of dust, let them try." The chamber filled with cruel laughter, echoing across the grand golden halls. The Empire's arrogance blinded them. They saw humans as nothing more than traders, colonists, and farmers. To them, Earth was not a warrior world, but a fragile one. They remembered humans begging for a place in the galactic markets a century ago, and now, these same humans dared to say no entry. The Council agreed that such insolence could not go unpunished. The order went out. An expedition fleet of 30 warships would enter Terran space. The mission was simple: show the Terrans their place. The fleet commander, Lord Veyron, was a veteran of 100 battles. His ships were armed with plasma lances, siege torpedoes, and gravity hammers. He had crushed rebellions, burned worlds, and forced entire star systems into silence. To him, the Terran decree was a joke, a line in the sand waiting to be trampled. When the fleet arrived at the borders of Terran space, they expected resistance. They expected perhaps a small patrol fleet of human ships, maybe some desperate message begging for mercy. But there was nothing. No warships, no signals, no warning shots, only quiet stars. The emptiness unsettled the junior officers. They whispered about the humans' strange silence, but Lord Veyron dismissed their doubts. He stood tall on the bridge and said, "They hide because they are weak." The fleet pushed deeper into Terran space. Their scanners showed old satellites, derelict stations, and abandoned mining outposts. It looked like the humans had withdrawn long ago. This discovery made the officers laugh. One captain mocked, "Perhaps the Terrans fled their own borders out of fear." Another added, "All we will find here are empty rocks and cowardly shadows." The bridge filled with arrogant smiles, but deep inside, a quiet unease was spreading. Because silence can sometimes be more dangerous than war, on the 5th day, the first scout ship vanished. Its last transmission was only static, followed by screams, then silence. At first, Lord Veyron dismissed it as an accident. He ordered the fleet forward, saying, "One ship does not matter." But when a second and then a third scout disappeared, whispers filled the ranks. Crews began to speak of shadows in the void, strange blurs seen on long-range scanners too fast to track. The officers brought the reports to Lord Veyron, but he only grew angrier. "They are tricks, nothing more," he roared. "The Terrans cannot frighten the Empire." Still, some of the younger soldiers felt the truth. They noticed how even the stars seemed darker here, how signals echoed, strangely as if the void itself was listening. The Terran border was not empty. It was a trap, waiting patiently. One night, in the silence of space, a signal came. It was faint, distorted, but the words were clear. "You were warned." The message, repeated once, then cut off, leaving only static. The bridge crew froze, their blood cold. Even Lord Veyron felt a chill, though he hid it behind rage. "Find the source," he ordered. But the source was everywhere. It was as if the void itself had spoken. The warning had been given. The Empire had ignored it. And now something in the darkness was watching them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The arrogant fleet that had mocked Earth's decree did not yet realize it. But they were no longer hunters. They were prey. The first vanishing, the fleet of the Empire pressed deeper into Terran space. Every mile of void they crossed felt heavier, as if the stars themselves carried a warning. Yet Lord Veyron would not turn back. To retreat would mean admitting fear. And fear was forbidden in the Empire, he told his officers. The Terrans hide, they have nothing, this is only empty sky. His words were strong, but his eyes betrayed unease. The crews began to whisper in the dark halls of their ships. Some said they heard voices in the static of their comms. Others swore they saw shapes moving against the black of space. Fast, silent, too sharp to be shadows. But each report was dismissed as paranoia. Arrogance kept the officers blind and pride sealed their ears. Then the real fear began. On the 7th day, the destroyer. Sarek went silent. No alarms, no distress call, no final transmission. One moment it was part of the formation. The next, it was gone. The fleet searched, sending probes and signals, but found nothing. Not even wreckage. It was as if the ship had been erased from existence. The crews grew restless. A captain approached Lord Veyron asking for caution, but Veyron silenced him with fury. "The Empire does not tremble at shadows," he thundered. "If the Terrans think tricks will frighten us, they will soon learn what fire truly is." But the next night, another ship vanished. This time it was the cruiser Iron Fang, one of the fleet's strongest vessels. Its escorts swore they saw a dark shape slide past their scanners. A distortion, like something bending the light. Then the Iron Fang flickered and was gone. Silence followed. Then nothing but the quiet hum of their own systems. Fear spread like a sickness through the fleet. Officers tried to maintain order, but whispers could not be stopped. Some said the humans had weapons that could swallow ships whole. Others believed Terrans had allied with ancient monsters of the void. Every crew member knew one truth. This was not a natural enemy. This was something designed, patient, and merciless. Lord Veyron tried to tighten his grip. He ordered the fleet into tighter formations. He sent patrols sweeping every sector. He doubled the watch on every ship. But no matter what he did, the disappearances continued. One by one, ships were snatched from the dark, always without warning, always without a trace. By the 12th day, 6 ships were gone. The fleet that once marched with arrogant pride now trembled in silence. The soldiers avoided the windows, afraid of the empty stars. Some even covered mirrors inside their quarters, whispering that the void was watching. The air smelled of fear, and fear was a poison that spread quickly. Then came the survivor. From the darkness, a small scout ship stumbled back into formation. Its hull was scarred, its engines failing, its comms broken. When the docking bay opened, the rescue teams froze. The crew inside were alive, but broken. Their eyes were wide with terror, their voices hoarse from endless screams. They clutched at the walls at their rescuers, begging for light. One officer repeated the same words over and over. They are here, shadows, the shadows." The medics tried to calm them, but nothing worked. Whatever they had seen had shattered their minds. The soldiers who carried them away whispered among themselves. If this was the result of Terran weapons, then no fleet was safe. If this was the power of humans, then the Empire was already doomed. But still, Lord Veyron refused to admit defeat. He stood before his officers and declared, "These are tricks, illusions, nothing more. The Terrans cannot match the Empire." His words sounded strong, but the room was heavy with silence. The officers bowed, but doubt lingered in their eyes. That night, as the fleet drifted in uneasy silence, another signal came. It was faint, distorted, carried through every channel at once. It was a human voice, calm, steady, and merciless. "You were warned." The words repeated. Then the channel went dead. Every crew member felt their hearts freeze. The humans were not gone. They were here, watching, hunting, waiting. The Empire had mocked Earth's decree. They had crossed the forbidden line. Now their arrogance was leading them into a darkness they could not escape. The first vanishings were only the beginning. The true terror of Terran space had yet to reveal itself. Terran silence breaks. The fleet was no longer proud. The laughter and mockery that once filled its halls had been replaced by whispers and dread. Every officer walked with tense shoulders. Every soldier glanced nervously at the stars. Ships that once felt invincible now felt like fragile shells drifting in a sea of predators. The arrogance of the Empire was cracking, but Lord Veyron would not admit it. He stood on the bridge, his armor shining under cold lights. He spoke with a voice heavy with command. The Terrans are cowards. They use tricks, illusions. They cannot fight us directly. But even he felt the lie in his words, for in the silence of space he too had begun to wonder. It was then that the silence broke. Across every ship, alarms screamed. A massive signal burst across the void. It was not a distress beacon, not a transmission of peace. It was a single chilling phrase carried in a voice deeper than steel. You were warned. The sound was not loud, but it was everywhere. It did not come from one direction. It came from all. The words rattled through engines, shook through comms, echoed inside helmets. Soldiers clutched their ears, officers froze, and fear rippled across the fleet like fire. The message repeated 3 times, then ended, leaving only the hum of power systems. Lord Veyron roared in fury. Track the source now, find them, he shouted. But the technicians looked pale. There is no source, Commander. It comes from everywhere. The words made the bridge grow colder. Every officer felt the truth. This was not a bluff. It was a warning. Then, without warning, the darkness shifted. From the void, a shape appeared. At first it looked like a shadow, a trick of the eye. But then the scanners screamed. It was massive, a ship so large it blotted out the stars behind it. Its hull was blackened, scarred, and yet alive with faint lights. It moved without sound, sliding into existence as if it had always been there, a Terran warship. The Empire officers gasped. This was not a fragile colony vessel, not a transport or trader. This was a predator dressed in metal. Its design was strange, brutal, built not for beauty but for survival and destruction. Weapons lined its surface, more than any Empire ship carried. Its armor looked centuries old, yet it pulsed with hidden strength. The sight alone was enough to crush pride into dust. Lord Veyron's face turned pale, but he forced his voice steady. Fire, he commanded. Dozens of Empire ships opened fire at once, lances of plasma and torpedoes lighting the void. The Terran ship did not move. The weapons struck its hull, exploding into blinding fire. But when the light cleared, the Terran ship still floated, silent and untouched. Its shields shimmered once, then faded. The Empire fleet had done nothing. Then the Terran ship answered. Without a sound, its weapons lit up. Beams of white fire cut through space, faster than eyes could follow. 3 Empire ships were destroyed in the first strike, torn apart like paper. A second volley crippled 2 more, leaving them burning husks, drifting helplessly. In less than a minute, 5 ships were gone. The Empire fleet had never seen such speed, such precision, such cold efficiency. The bridge filled with panic. They fight like machines, one officer whispered. No, another replied, voice shaking. They fight like predators. The Terran warship did not pursue. It did not chase. It did not speak. It fired, destroyed, then slid back into the void, gone as quickly as it appeared. Only wreckage remained, floating in silence. For the first time, the Empire understood. The Terrans had not begged for mercy when they declared their borders forbidden. They had given a warning, and now that warning had teeth. The fleet drifted, broken and terrified. Lord Veyron stood frozen, staring at the empty stars. His pride was bleeding away, but his arrogance still clung to him like armor. He whispered to himself, "This is only one ship, only one." But in the silence, his crew wondered, if one Terran ship could cripple them so easily, how many more waited in the dark? The silence of Terran space was no longer empty. It was alive. It was watching. It was hunting. The Terrans had broken their silence. The counterstrike begins. The Empire fleet limped in silence. Where once there had been arrogance and laughter, now there was only fear. Ships that had entered Terran space with pride now floated like prey animals in a forest they did not understand. Every shadow looked like an enemy. Every silence sounded like a threat. And yet, Lord Veyron refused to retreat. He clung to his arrogance as if it were a weapon. "This is one ship, nothing more," he told his officers, but his words carried no weight. The crew had seen how that single Terran warship had torn their armada apart in minutes. They had seen their strongest vessels ripped open like toys, and they had watched the Terrans vanish back into the dark as if the void itself obeyed them. The council on the Empire's capital demanded results. They sent transmissions, mocking the Terran trick ship and urging Veyran to finish the mission. But far from home, the soldiers no longer felt the strength of their Emperor's voice. They felt only the chill of Terran space closing in around them. Then the true counterstrike began. It was not loud. It was not a full assault. It was silent, surgical, like a knife sliding into flesh. Supply lines were the first to fall. Convoys bringing fuel and food to the Empire's frontiers vanished. Merchant ships carrying resources to the fleet stopped arriving. Entire communication relays went dark overnight, and no one saw who had done it. No transmissions, no demands, only silence. Empire outposts along the border began to crumble. One mining colony reported strange signals in the sky, then went silent forever. A research station studying neutron stars vanished from all charts. Even the beacons that marked safe travel lanes began to flicker and fail. It was as if the Terrans were cutting the Empire's veins one by one. Fear spread faster than any weapon. Captains who once mocked humanity now begged to return home. Soldiers prayed in the dark of their cabins. Even Veyran's most loyal officers struggled to hide their dread. For every night the Terrans sent a signal, always the same 3 words. You were warned. Then the strikes grew bolder. Not only did the Terrans cut supplies, they struck deep into Empire territory. One great shipyard, once filled with new warships under construction, was found in ruins. Its skeletons of ships were broken and burning. The workers were gone. No bodies, no survivors, nothing left but silence. The Empire tried to cover the truth. They spread lies across their worlds, claiming it was an accident. But rumors traveled faster than orders. Whispers of Terran vengeance spread from system to system, and in the shadows of the Empire, conquered species listened. For centuries they had been crushed under the Empire's rule. Now they heard of Terrans striking back, and they began to hope. Small rebellions rose on distant planets. Slaves broke chains. Miners refused orders. Governors were overthrown. The Terrans did not appear directly, but their strikes gave courage to the oppressed, and soon, fires of rebellion burned across the Empire's borders. The once stable rule of the Emperor began to shake. Lord Veyran watched his fleet grow weaker by the day. Ships ran low on supplies, morale cracked, and discipline shattered. Still he shouted orders of pride. Still he demanded obedience. But even he felt the truth. They were not the hunters here. They were the hunted. One night, as his flagship drifted in uneasy silence, the stars flickered. Dozens of Terran warships appeared as if the void itself had opened. Not one, not two, but an entire fleet. Their black hulls bore scars of old battles. Their weapons glowed faintly with restrained power. The officers froze, their blood turning to ice. This was no accident. This was no illusion. The Terrans had revealed their strength. They did not fire at once. Instead, they surrounded the Empire fleet in silence. Every Terran ship broadcast the same message. This is Terran space. You were warned. The Empire ships, once proud, now trembled in fear. Some captains begged to flee, others prepared to surrender. But Lord Veyran refused. His pride was a chain he could not break. He raised his voice in fury. Fight. We are the Empire. We bow to no one. His words echoed, but his soldiers no longer believed. For the truth was now clear to all. The Terrans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were predators hiding in silence, waiting for arrogance to step across their line. The counterstrike had begun, and the Empire's everything was already slipping from its grasp. And the Empire had only seen the beginning. Collapse of arrogance. The Empire's fleets had always been its pride. For centuries they had marched through the stars with unstoppable power. Worlds had bowed, species had surrendered, and rebellions had been burned to ash. But now, in the heart of Terran space, that pride was bleeding away. Every day another convoy was lost. Every night another fleet went silent. The The great machine of the Empire was breaking apart piece by piece. On the capital world, the High Council gathered in the Golden Chambers. They shouted, argued, and blamed one another. Some demanded more fleets to be sent, others called for peace talks. But arrogance still poisoned their hearts. One minister sneered, "We cannot bow to humans, they are insects, they are beneath us," another added. "A few losses mean nothing, the Empire cannot fall." Yet even as they spoke, reports arrived of more colonies lost, more rebellions rising, more silence spreading across the border. The Emperor sat in silence, his face hard and cold. He was a ruler who had always demanded obedience, who had crushed countless systems with fire. But now even he felt the weight of fear. His advisors begged him to act, to send more ships, to show strength. And yet, deep inside, he knew the truth. The Terrans were no longer prey. They were predators, and predators do not stop once the hunt begins. Meanwhile, across the frontier, rebellion grew like wildfire. Species that had suffered under the Empire's chains now saw hope. Whispers of Terran vengeance gave them courage. On one world, miners refused to work and stormed the governor's palace. On another, slaves turned their own chains into weapons. The Empire tried to silence the uprisings with fear, but their fleets were too busy running from shadows, their armies too scattered, and their power too weak. Lord Veyron's fleet, once proud, was now broken. Out of 30 ships, only 15 remained. Supplies ran low, discipline cracked, and soldiers whispered of mutiny. Every time they tried to regroup, the Terrans struck, not with massive battles, but with sudden, precise attacks. A fuel ship here, a weapons convoy there. Each strike bled the fleet further. Each strike drove more fear into the hearts of the soldiers. On the bridge of his flagship, Veyron stood tall, but even he could feel the weight pressing down. His voice no longer inspired confidence, only desperation. "We are the Empire. We will not fall to shadows," he told his crew. But his words sounded empty, and the silence of his officers revealed the truth. No one believed him anymore. Then came the Terran broadcast. Not a whisper, not a threat, but a declaration. Across every channel, every frequency, the words rang out. "You mocked our boundaries. You were warned, now you will pay." The message repeated, steady and merciless. On every Empire world, soldiers and civilians alike heard it. For the first time in living memory, fear of another species spread across the galaxy. The collapse of arrogance was no longer just a fear. It was reality. Entire sectors went dark. Trade routes that had been lifelines of the Empire now belonged to Terran fleets. The Empire's own allies began to question their loyalty. Some whispered of leaving. Some whispered of joining the Terrans. And in the shadows, more rebellions grew. The once great Empire now looked fragile. Like glass ready to shatter, in the council chambers, panic broke through pride. One counselor slammed his fist and cried, "We must talk to them. We must beg for peace." Another shouted, "Peace is weakness. If we bow now, we are nothing." The room dissolved into chaos, voices screaming, threats flying. But the truth was clear. The Empire had mocked humanity, and now humanity had shown its power. Far from the capital, on the edge of Terran space, Veyron stood on his bridge. His face was pale, his voice cold. He looked at the stars, at the endless black that now felt alive with watching eyes. He whispered, not to his crew but to himself, "We should have listened. We should never have come." The collapse was not loud. It was not a single great battle. It was quiet, steady, like rot spreading through wood. The arrogance of the Empire was crumbling, and every soldier, every officer, every citizen now knew it. The Empire's fall had already begun, and the Terrans had not even shown their full strength the last stand. The Empire had never known fear like this. For centuries, its fleets had ruled the stars. Its armies had crushed all resistance. But now one small planet's decree, "Do not enter Terran space," and had broken that illusion. The Council could no longer hide the truth. The Terrans were real, they were powerful, and they were destroying the Empire from the shadows. So, the Emperor made a final choice. He called upon every world still loyal. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was ordered to assemble. The largest fleet in the Empire's history was born, thousands of ships stretching across the void like a wall of steel and fire. This was to be the last stand, one final battle to prove the Empire's strength. The galaxy watched. On every world, species held their breath. Some prayed for the Empire's survival, others prayed for its destruction, but all knew that the fate of the stars would be decided in this battle. Lord Varen, weary and scarred, commanded the fleet. He had lost much, his pride shattered, his fleet broken, but he still stood as the Emperor's sword. He swore before the council, "I will bring you victory, or I will die in the fire." His words were brave, but his eyes carried the weight of doom. The fleet, gathered on the edge of Terran space, thousands of ships lined in formation, their weapons ready. The sight was terrifying, a storm of steel stretching across the stars. But the Terrans did not come. Hours passed, then days. The silence of the void grew heavier. Soldiers whispered, "What if they will not face us?" Others said, "Perhaps they are afraid." Then the stars went dark. Shadows spread across the void. Not one, not two, but hundreds of shapes emerged. Terran warships, vast and scarred, sliding into reality as if the darkness had birthed them. Some were the size of moons, others bristled with weapons that glowed like suns. Together they formed a wall of black steel, and in that moment, the largest fleet in the galaxy felt small. The first Terran broadcast cut through every channel. "You were warned." The words were calm, merciless, final. The Empire fired first. Thousands of cannons roared, lighting the void with fire. Missiles streaked across space. Plasma beams tore forward. The stars themselves seemed to burn under the Empire's fury. But when the light faded, the Terran wall still stood. Their shields shimmered, their armor unbroken. The Empire's greatest storm had done nothing. Then the Terrans answered. The black ships lit up with deadly light. Beams cut through space, faster than thought, sharper than any blade. Entire squadrons vanished in seconds. Cruisers were split in half. Battleships burned. Carriers exploded. The void became a graveyard of twisted metal and dying fire. Lord Varen screamed orders. He commanded his ships to charge to break the Terran line, but it was like charging into a storm. Every move was answered with precision. Every formation shattered before it could strike. The Terrans did not fight with rage. They fought with cold calculation. They were not defending, they were exterminating. The battle raged for hours, but slowly, surely, the Empire's might was consumed one by one. The great ships fell. Pride and arrogance burned away in fire. Soldiers who once mocked Earth now begged for mercy. But the Terrans gave none. They had warned, and the warning had been ignored, and his flagship, Lord Varen, stood among chaos. His ship shook under endless fire, alarms screamed, his officers fell one by one. He looked out at the void. At the endless wall of Terran ships, for the first time in his life, he felt not anger but regret. He whispered, "We should never have mocked them. We should have listened." Moments later, his flagship was torn apart, the last roar of the Empire's greatest commander silenced in fire. When the battle ended, silence returned. The Empire's greatest fleet had been erased. Thousands of ships reduced to wreckage, millions of soldiers lost in the cold void. The stars burned with the light of ruined pride. The Terran fleet stood victorious, untouched. They did not celebrate. They did not speak. They simply turned, sliding back into the shadows, leaving the wreckage behind as their answer. The last stand of the Empire had ended, not with triumph, but with silence. The silence of defeat, the silence of a predator walking away from its prey and across the galaxy. Every species understood the truth. The age of the Empire was over. The age of Terran power had begun. Terran space remains. The great battle was over. The Empire's proud fleet was gone. Where once thousands of ships had filled the sky, only wreckage remained. Burning hulks drifted through the void, silent reminders of arrogance and pride. The Empire had thrown everything into its last stand, and everything had been lost. On worlds across the galaxy, news spread like wildfire. At first, there was disbelief. The Empire had never lost a battle on such a scale, but the evidence could not be denied. Survivors spoke in broken voices, trembling as they told their stories. They spoke of Terran warships that moved like shadows, of weapons that tore fleets apart in minutes, of silence that felt alive, and of a final wall of black ships that had crushed all hope. The High Council on the capital tried to hide the truth. They claimed the fleet had been betrayed. They claimed strange cosmic storms had aided the humans, but no lie could stop the truth from spreading. The galaxy had seen the fall with its own eyes. The Empire's arrogance was shattered, its power broken. Across the borders, rebellions grew bolder. Slaves threw down their chains. Colonies refused taxes. Governors were overthrown. For centuries, the Empire had ruled through fear. Now that fear was gone, and in its place was a new kind of fear, fear of the Terrans. Because if the Empire could fall, then who was safe? In the void, the Terrans gave their final answer. Across every frequency, on every world, their broadcast echoed. The voice was calm, cold, merciless. This is Terran space. Respect our boundaries, or share their fate. The message repeated 3 times, then silence returned. No threats, no boasts, no demands for tribute. Only the warning, simple and final. The galaxy trembled. Some species whispered of allying with the Terrans. Others swore to stay as far from them as possible. But none dared to laugh anymore. The humans were no longer a rumor, no longer a joke. They were a force, a shadow in the stars, a predator that no one wished to face. On Earth, the Terran Council stood in silence. They had not sought glory. They had not sought conquest. All they had demanded was respect for their borders. But when that demand was mocked, they had shown the galaxy what defiance cost. Humanity had bled before, had been underestimated before, and each time they had risen stronger, sharper, colder. Now the galaxy understood what arrogance had awakened. Lord Varen's name faded into history. Once he had been the Empire's greatest commander. Now he was remembered only as the fool who led his people into Terran space. The wreckage of his fleet became a graveyard, untouched. No one dared to cross. That line again. The border of Terran space glowed red on every map. Not as a warning from the humans, but as a warning from the galaxy itself. Ships that once passed too close now turned away. Merchants gave Terran systems a wide berth. Explorers erased Terran routes from their plans. The silence of that space became legend. Children on distant worlds whispered of the humans in their stories. They said the Terrans lived in the shadows, watching, waiting, and that if you mocked them, they would come for you. The Empire, broken and bleeding, tried to rebuild, but every attempt was met with rebellion. Every fleet they sent was weaker, smaller, less loyal. The once mighty throne of the Emperor grew fragile, and in the quiet of his palace even he knew the Empire would never return to its former glory, because arrogance had destroyed them, and humanity had made certain the lesson would never be forgotten. The galaxy now had a new balance. It was not ruled by treaties or by crowns. It was ruled by fear, fear of the one decree that had shattered an empire. Terran spaces forbidden, the Empire had mocked, and they had paid with everything. Their fleets, their worlds, their pride, their name. All consumed in silence, all erased by a power they never understood, and so the legend of humanity spread. A warning whispered in every port, carved into every map. Do not cross into Terran space, for those who do will not return. The galaxy would never forget, and humanity would never forgive.